Welcome to Psychic Social, brought to you by psychic.co.uk.
On this episode of Psychic Social,
we look back at what's happened and how we've progressed and what things we've experienced and what further experiences we need to enjoy. It may not be on the earth, it may be in a different dimension, it's a different world, but we get to choose.
welcome to Psychic Social with me, Oliver Duke, the podcast that explores all things from the psychic and spiritual perspectives, including interviews with famous psychic practitioners, discussions about the afterlife, the paranormal, and much more. So relax and enjoy the show. Today's guest has been a psychic medium for over 25 years. She's an intuitive clairsentient, a healer, and an inspirational tarot card reader. I'm describing the super talented and lovely Sas Bullock. So let's get to know her right now on Psychic Social. Hi Sas, and welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hello Oliver, and to all your listeners. I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to sharing some information about my particular journey from the psychic perspective.
Great stuff. What have you been up to today? Anything exciting?
Nothing too exciting. It's a Monday morning, so I generally create my day to fit in with my kind of soul's calling, if you like. And at the moment, Oliver, I'm currently involved in a 21-day abundance meditation group situation. So I have been doing my particular exercise and task for the day, which was to create a list of 50 people who I admire and I feel are very sort of holistic in the way they live their lives.
Right.
So
okay.
It's all about focusing in on the gratitude and what you have already in your life that you can focus and appreciate.
That's good.
So I've done that this morning. In the meditation this morning, and I also have a sort of daily routine of a specific health drink to keep all my tubes and everything clear, and to sort of give my vibration a good old clearing out, so keep it raised. Mm-hmm. And then I work every morning. Before I start anything, I do a 5 Tibetan rite, which is kind of like yoga moves, which I read about years ago, this fantastic book that I got into, which is all about, it's like a novel, but actually there's a lot of truth in it. It was about this guy who found Shangri-La and a particular place where all these monks lived in Tibet, and none of them ever aged. They all looked about 25. And he went there to find out how, what this was all about, and how come his friend who'd returned after the war looking 25 years younger. So I do these rites religiously every morning to keep my system clear. So that's what I've been doing this morning. So and what I do most mornings before I sort of start anything.
That's good. That sounds like a very good start to the day.
It is
very healthy.
Very clear.
Yes.
I don't normally start doing anything till at least midday,
right,
other than my exercises and getting into the swing of the day.
But it's a very healthy start for body and mind each morning.
It feels like that. So I always feel very clear, and also I do a lot of psychic work at night, and also after 12 o'clock I feel much more tuned in as a soul reader and a psychic. I feel much more tuned in after midday, and I quite often am working till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So I don't sort of approach the morning with too much gusto and vigor.
Okay, fair enough. And I was going to ask you, your name Sas, S-A-S, where does that come from? It's a very interesting name.
Well, yes, it is a quite interesting name. It does derive originally, there's a very long story about all my names, but I got stuck with that one at school because I was somebody that had a lot larger feet than anyone else. Now, it's quite normal for people to have quite large feet, especially women. But in my day, when I was growing up, I had rather large feet. I couldn't really find any shoes to fit. Anyway, so all my friends thought it was hilarious, and they called me Sasquatch, which was shortened to Sas. But then years and years and years later, I had a kind of one of my awakening experiences. I heard a voice which said to me that my name Sas, S-A-S, actually should stand for Soul Awakening Sound, because I won't go into it right now. It's something we can talk about at a later date maybe, but working with vibrational frequencies, obviously as I do with readings, I tune into a different type of frequency, which is to tune people back into their original calibration or their original soul energy. and I use sound to do that, vocal sounds as well as instruments. And so hence the name was born, Soul Awakening Sound, which I shortened to SAS.
Well, that's very interesting indeed. Yes, very good.
Yes, and I do. And obviously it stands for Sassy as well, which of course I am that as well. So it covers quite a few bases.
Covers all the bases, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting stories. Right, okay. Well, with that in mind, we'll go into some more interesting stuff. We're going to ask you your first question. So, scary. We wanted to sort of go back to the beginning for you, back to the start, and ask you, how did you become a psychic? Was it passed down from a family member? Was there another way the gift came to you? And if it came to you at a certain age, what age did it come to you?
Well, Oliver, I'm not sure that anyone chooses and goes, right, today my life career is going to be as a psychic. I think it just is a gift that everybody has. It's just what you choose to focus your attention on. As you know, energy flows where attention goes. So I always had a very, very interesting awareness as a young child. I would say probably the awareness came to me about 6 or 7. And I became aware there was something not quite right about this planet. And I could sense it in every fibre of my being. And so I sort of dealt with that by being quite rebellious and not kowtowing to the normal rules and regulations that other people seem to abide by. So I was constantly in trouble growing up. Constantly a nemesis, my parents thought in their side, so to speak. But I just felt very tuned in to the planet, that it wasn't quite operating on the right level. And I knew that from an early age. And I think that's what guided me to tuning in and becoming more aware into people's psyche. So friends used to come around, my parents' friends used to turn up, for dinner parties and things, and I would come and start talking to them. And I'd start saying things to them about this and about that and about how they were feeling, and maybe I could pick up something, illness or... and I would share this with them, and they would kind of go, gosh, what a weird thing to say. And then they would come back to me a few weeks later and say, that thing you told me, it actually happened, or I found out that I had this particular illness or whatever. So it started not necessarily as a choice that I'm going to become a psychic, but it started to evolve through me from about the age of about 7. And as a result of that, some very weird and wonderful things I've experienced on a sort of spiritual awakening awareness level, a lot of it energy. So it's a kind of journey, it's a progression, it's an expansion into your everybody has these abilities. As I said before, I say to people when I do readings that they could also do what I do. It's just whether you choose to focus your attention on it. So I'd say it started from about 7, and it grew and grew and grew into lots of other modalities, lots of other interests that are sort of, on a similar path through the healing modalities that I trained to do as well. So I would say it's an expanding, growing, ever-growing journey that you kind of move into. Mm-hmm. I didn't necessarily was aware of anyone in the family that had a psychic career or a mediumship career, but I was aware that my mum was incredibly tuned in, and you couldn't really get away with doing much without her already knowing what you've already done.
Right. Okay.
And so I kind of... But I don't think it was a particularly welcomed sort of asset in days of quite a strong religious upbringing with my grandparents, that they were very strictly sort of Christian, and to do anything with tarots or anything like that would have been seen as dancing with the devil. So, and I suppose a lot of people still have that drummed into them. But I used to gather with school friends, and we used to do Ouija boards, which probably isn't such a great idea unless you know what you're doing. And so we used to have all sorts of incidences happening where we'd have the fingers on the glass, and we'd be asking questions, and we'd get, ridiculous messages from the Ouija board saying, "You just got through. I'm horny, the devil," and then the glass would fly off, and we'd all scream. So for years, I thought, well, I'm not sure I want to dabble in that. It's a bit scary. And then as I got older, I realised that you could set your intentions around what you were doing. And you could align yourself with everything that you were working with was going to be connected and intended to be for the person's greatest good and for the higher good of all involved. And so I used to sprinkle salt around a circle, or I'd smudge everybody with a smudge stick before we came into the circle and stepped into a circle to do any kind of work that included connecting or with other forces. But then I realized actually those other forces were just myself on a higher level. And I actually work with people's higher perspectives. So I'm not tapping into anything that's outside either myself or anybody else. It's just reaching at a higher vibration where the information is accessible on a much higher perspective. So that's how I work. I don't necessarily connect with other spirits or other entities that may be feeding me the information. It's actually coming from my higher perspective and the other person who I'm working with higher perspective. So I ask permission first for that, and that ensures that everything that I do is coming from a good place.
Right. Okay. So you said you work clairsentiently. Do you work clairvoyantly? Do you see and clairaudiently? Do you hear things? Do you have guides that you get messages from? How does it work for you?
Well, again, I am clairaudient, so I do get messages. But again, it's not. It's coming from myself. It's coming from a higher perspective. I have messages all the time that ask me to do things. So also on the clairsentient, I tune in. I sense somebody's energy. I have a little dog, and she senses people's energies, and if they're poorly or they're feeling distressed or upset, she will go to them and give them comfort and love. And I suppose on that level, I also can tune in. So, for example, I might be at a festival, just there, just for pleasure, just to go and enjoy myself. And I'll be standing by a fire, and a few people will be around the fire, and I'll get a message which will say, "Can you tell that guy next to him that he needs to cover his kidneys up because he may get kidney problems?" And I'll just say, I'll say to him, "I've just got a message through. It may sound a bit strange. Would you like to receive it?" And they go, "Well, yeah. What do you mean a message?" I said, "Well, it comes from the spirit world." That's how I say it, because then people kind of understand it. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, "I've just been given a message that you need to look after your kidneys because they could be struggling, especially if it's out in the cold. You need to put something around them." And I remember one time this guy saying to me, "Oh my God, that's really weird. My dad just died of kidney disease 3 weeks ago." So wow. Sometimes when I was growing up, I used to get messages and you think, am I completely mad? Will people think I'm crazy if I pass this on? But then I thought, well, actually, it's not really up to me to decide. Information is coming through, and I act on it now. I act on it all the time, and I have, literally been sent to places around the world through messages and guidance that I get, what I call from my highest, wisest self, which is on a different level to my consciousness. I explain to people that 75% of your awareness and your consciousness does not enter into the body when you're born. It remains in a higher perspective. And I call it the director of your life, the director of your play, the director of your drama. And the director is always trying to guide you, a bit like a sat-nav. But you have to take movements in life in order for it to kick in. So I always say to people, if you're stuck in life, make a movement in any direction and you'll soon get feedback as it's the right direction, or whether you need to take a left turn, a right turn, up or down. So I don't actually see spirit. I do see lots of orbs. I see lots of bright turquoise and dark purple and blue lights around people. But I don't actually see human beings in their spirit form around. But I have sensed them. I have sensed them in my bedroom. I know it sounds weird, standing at the bottom of my bed. But I was too scared to look, so I'd always keep my eyes closed and sort of say, "Please go away." really cowardly. So I haven't encouraged spirit to visit me in terms of visualization or visualizing, but I do see energies out the corner of my eye, and I see lots of orbs. And when I take photographs and things and have them, and look at them, sometimes I have thousands of orbs all around. So I do sense things. I do sense energy more so than actually seeing spirit.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm going to move on to the next question now. And I wanted to know we wanted to know at Psychic Social, what's the most important thing to you about being a psychic?
I would say that I've been born onto this planet at this time, like many other people, to help bring about a shift in the consciousness of humanity. And to me, it's about helping people to find their own power, their own abilities and gifts that may be latent, that may have been hidden, that may have been put to one side, especially working with adults. Because adults, when they're children, have lots of amazing creative imagination. They have wild dreams and imaginings, which I encourage with my own children. But I notice that a lot of people play it down. And when a little girl may say, I've got my little friend here in spirit, a visible friend, or I may see or hear things that are beyond the realm of visible light, they were encouraged to play that down, and that's a load of nonsense. So to me, it's about helping people to reconnect to all those parts of themselves, all those aspects of themselves that are wanting to express themselves, are wanting to give them greater powers, a greater range for them to access, so that they can have more say and more co-creative ability in their life. So they're not at the mercy of what I call fate, where people are just sort of expecting life to sort of take them on a ride and they're just going with it. Obviously, you can do that, or like I encourage, and why I do this work is to help people find a way through life that is going to bring them the greatest joy. To me, life is about joy. It's about finding your joy. It's about service to others, because that brings me immense joy, to help other people, to see other people flourish and to grow. So when I do other work with people and help them release trauma and stress and illness through their voice, through using their voice, and people say, I can't sing. And I say, well, you don't have to. You're just using your voice to clear energy and allow yourself to recalibrate back to your original point. And when they come together and they allow those thoughts, those insecurities to subside, people come out with the most amazing things, and it just fills my heart up. It's just so beautiful to see the amazing creative abilities that people have and what's been shut down in them throughout their growing up. So that to me is the reason why I do the work, is to access, and quite a lot of people are very interested in the psychic world, probably because it's something which they probably have an inkling of, or have a connection to themselves, and want to follow that up, and are very interested in that subject. So that's quite often an opening connection tool that I use to also do some of the other work that I do.
That's great. And it's really important, the thing about helping people as well, isn't it? It's been proven, hasn't it? I think that when you help someone, it can leave a good feeling within you for days afterwards, unconsciously, which is nice, isn't it? And yeah, it's great to help people all the time, I think, and I personally would try and do that on a daily basis as much as I can. I personally set myself a goal to sort of do 3 or 4 kind acts a day, if I can,
Well, and also what's really interesting is when you're kind, it releases, I think it's nitrous oxide into your body. When you hold a baby in your arms, or you see something which appeals to you in a kind of cute way, it actually releases nitrous oxide, which is actually the kindness, a kind of kindness chemical that actually keeps your heart open and opens all your vessels and veins. So actually, there's actually a physiological benefit to kindness, as well as a feel-good factor on an emotional and mental level. So, and also I kind of understand, obviously, having an awareness of the connection of all things, is that we're all energy, we're all vibrating at a certain level, but we're all connected, we're all one energy, one consciousness. So when you help other people, that's why I suppose Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself, because the neighbor is yourself, just in a different outfit. So when I meet people, they are me disguised heavily as themselves. But you are an aspect of me, Oliver. You're the aspect of me that is doing something other than I'm doing. But if I can help you, I'm also helping myself as well. Yeah. But to give you the option, the chance to help other people means that you're contributing to life. And I think most people feel at their best when they're helping other people. I mean, look what's happening in Australia with all the dreadful situations going on there, and how the silver lining to it all is look at all the beauty and kindness and compassion that people are showing to each other, to the animals. People around the world, are doing mass meditations and prayers for everybody. So actually, sometimes the worst situations can bring out the very best in humans.
I mean, it actually is inherent, isn't it, in human beings, essentially?
Well, what do we call? We're called humankind.
Yeah.
So my life is about putting the kind back into being human.
Lovely. Well, that's a lovely sentiment, and that's going to take us nicely into the break. So that'll be the end of part 1 here with Sas Bullock, and we're going to catch up with more questions and more stuff from Sas in part 2. We'll see you after this.
This is Psychic Social, where the world's best psychics tell you their story.
Hi, hope you're enjoying the show today. Now, we have a brand new horoscope email you can subscribe to at psychic.co.uk. All you have to do is wait for the pop-up to show on the website and then enter your email and star sign, and every Sunday night we'll email you a free horoscope for the week ahead. Now, you can dive in one step further if you wish and take a look at our Horoscope Plus memberships. This is your weekly horoscope plus a lot more. There are 3 memberships to choose from, and we've covered all budgets, we feel. So the Robin membership gives you private, exclusive access to a more detailed horoscope on the member horoscope pages at the website, and a chance to win a psychic reading via Zoom each month. And you'll get a free access code as well to the taster version of our amazing video tarot course with Nikki Allen, 10-Hour Tarot. Now, this membership is just £1.99 per month, and you can cancel it anytime you like. There's a ton of stuff in there for such a small amount of money, so much value. The next membership we've got is the Feather membership. It's a step up from there, and it's just £5.99 per month, and you can also cancel anytime for that one too. Now, as a Feather member, you'll get a much more detailed, in-depth horoscope than the Robin membership horoscope. And on that Feather member horoscope page on the website, you'll get exclusive access to that with over 1,000 words of horoscope broken down into 3 sections. That's including romance, work and family. It really will give you a fantastic insight into the week ahead every single week. You'll also get our truly amazing astrology video. That's thrown in for free as well, which is 30 minutes of fantastic content on astrology. And as with the Robin membership, you'll also get a chance to win a psychic reading via Zoom every month too. So that's wonderful value in there as well for $5.99 a month for the Feather membership. And the final membership is the Angel member. That's the top level membership to access on the site. That gives you some amazing stuff, and all that info is on the website. Just head to psychic.co.uk/membership and take a look at which one will suit you. We'll put the link in the show notes of this podcast down below for you, so you can just click there and check them all out there. You can also check out the horoscope page and have a little sneak peek at what the Robin members are getting there already. That's at psychic.co.uk/horoscope. Right, now back to the show.
This is Psychic Social, the spiritual home of psychics.
Welcome back to part 2 of Psychic Social and our chat with Sas Bullock. Now, continuing on with our questions for Sas, we've got another one here, and it is: are there any heartwarming stories that stand out from any of your psychic readings over the years?
Well, of course, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of readings over the years, and there's been some really heartwarming ones that people phone back and they'll kind of fill me in of what's happened since we had a conversation or a reading. But one particularly stands out because I had this really beautiful soul, and she phoned up, and I wasn't too sure exactly what she was wanting because she didn't make it clear. And I did ask her, I said, what is the nature of your call? How may I help you? And she decided to tell me this story that she goes to salsa dancing and different dancing classes, and she had a problem because she couldn't find any men that had the energy to dance in the manner that she did. So she was kind of ringing up to say, could I guide her to anybody that would be maybe up to being able to keep up with her very lively, energetic dancing. So as we got chatting, I'll just say her name was Lily. So I said, so Lily, what's going on? She said, well, I go 3 times a week, and I've never found a man yet that can keep up with me. She said, they're all too crusty and old. And I said, well, how old are you, Lily? And she said, I'm 85, dear, but I've got the life and soul of a real, about 30 years younger. So I sort of gave her a few suggestions, and I said, there's a really interesting group that you can connect with called Meetup, and they quite often have lots of different local gatherings and groups in your area. So maybe you could extend your social connections through this medium. So she said, do you know what? I'll do it. I can get online. I can do all of that. So that's the other thing with men of my age. None of them able to go on the computer. So she'd have absolutely fed up. I need someone younger. So I directed her to this particular, she probably heard of, Meetup. And anyway, a couple of weeks later, she phones back and she said, oh my goodness, thank you so much. I found a man 20 years younger than me that had the same kind of energy. 65. He's called Harold, and he's absolutely fantastic at dancing. I'm so pleased. I wanted to ring back and say how amazing I was. Anyway, she phoned back another week later, and she said, well, do you know what? I thought my life was going downhill because I wanted to share it with somebody. And this Harold, she said, I found out he's got a camper van. And she said he's invited me to travel around Europe with him in his camper van. So she said, and I'm going. So 85-year-old Lily not only found a dancing partner who could keep up with her, but she also went off on I don't know what happened to her. She never called me back after that. Right. But she went off traveling with Harold in his camper van, and she was 85 years old. And I just thought that was just absolutely brilliant. And this goes to show that you can never, you never give up on life if you've still got some spark that. To always ask for guidance if you're stuck. Yeah. Because sometimes we do need someone outside of ourselves, because it's very difficult to be objective about your own life and about your own emotions, and to give yourself guidance when you've got you're attached to an outcome. So this lovely Lily, it just absolutely, I thought it was amazing. An 85-year-old lady going off in a camper van around Europe.
Sounds like she had a lot of life in her at 85. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. I loved it. It gave me. I said, you've honestly made my day. It made my month. You have, Lily. So she said, that meetup's really good, isn't it? I've been to lots of really interesting gatherings. I said, oh, great.
Brilliant.
So yes. And she also said, I see you do some healing. Can you give me a little bit of sound healing? I've gone a bit deaf. I said, well, I'll certainly clear your ears out with my sound. So she was just open for everything, and that's always say, if you remain open, you're like a parachute. You work. You need to be open, don't you?
Exactly, you do, most definitely. Now, were there any sort of funny or hilarious stories that really stood out for you from any of your readings? Some that made you really laugh at all?
Well, there's again many obscure, bizarre ones, more so than funny. But I did have this strange phone call, which did make me laugh, which was from this guy, and he phoned up and he was quite well spoken, and he said, hello there, my name's Alan, are you Sas Joy? I said, yes, I'm Sas Joy. He said, I've got a bit of a problem, bit of a dilemma. I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that. How can I help you? He said, well, I have a client. He said, I do what you do, I'm a medium. I had a client and he's very wealthy, and he died last week. I said, I'm sorry to hear that. He said, well, the trouble is he was the 6th richest man in the world. I said, oh, right, okay. So is there a problem with that? And he went, well, he left me over £6 billion and I don't know what to do with it.
Wow.
So I was rubbing my hands in glee, and I said, well, let me do some cards for you and let me see if there's any particular guidance. Maybe the reason why I've been left this money is so that you can fulfill some fantastic service to humanity. He said, well, I don't know about that, but it's completely thrown me off track. I mean, what do you do with $6 billion? And I was thinking of millions of things I could do with $6 billion, but I thought I better hold back. So I laid out the cards, and immediately there was this lovely, very powerful card in there, which was obviously a powerful woman that was coming in. So I said, Alan, I said, how's your love life? And he said, oh, it's been very bleak for many years. I said, well, I think it's about to perk up. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I can see at least a couple of women in here. And I said, one particularly, she's a very powerful woman coming your way. He said, don't tell me about bloody women. They're all money-grabbing whores, a lot of them. And I thought that's absolutely hilarious, as I obviously was talking to a woman at the time. And so anyway, I carried on giving a reading, but I just thought it was absolutely hilarious because there's no hold bars at all. But so any money-grabbing whores out there. And I said, well, actually, I don't think she is going to be a money-grabbing whore. I think she's going to be someone that's going to actually uplift and expand your life in quite a way. So anyway, it was a really interesting reading. But you do get some weird, bizarre, wonderful, uplifting, and some that are absolutely traumatic and heartbreaking. Yeah. So you go across the whole gambit.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Whole range.
I'm sure that one sounded completely bonkers, though, didn't it? I mean, £6 billion to inherit.
6 million. Can you believe it? I was thinking, oh my God, I could just have maybe a little smidgen.
What
be
do you
really
do with
happy.
that? I think you give most of it away, don't you? I mean, there's... Yeah.
Well, I think, that's the thing, you see, isn't it interesting? Now, you say that, Oliver. I think it's something like 99% of people who win a lot of money, like the lottery, for example, within 3 years, it's all completely gone.
All gone. Mainly because they don't know how to manage money, I think it is as well.
I think it's the internal compass, isn't it? Apparently your wealth compass is set by your parents. So, and most people don't go beyond that. So if money comes in a large sum, most people just don't know how to manage it or don't feel worthy, so they get rid of it. Interesting.
It is.
But if anybody out there is wanting to deposit some money and clear it, and I'm sure Oliver would be very open and very receptive to your gifts.
Yes, please. All donations gratefully received. Right, so that's great. So that's a really good story. My next question to you was, what are your thoughts and feelings about the afterlife and what happens after we leave this earth?
Well, that is a subject that could go on for many years. The subject of the afterlife. My personal feelings, and I've read lots of books about people who have actually died and then come back, and it's completely and utterly changed their world. I don't know if you ever read a book, Oliver, called Dying to Be Me.
No, I haven't. No.
But it's and I read Saved by the Light. So I've read lots of books on this, and my own feeling is that that we are literally spiritual beings having a human experience, and so the spiritual aspect of us, which is pure consciousness, is never ending. It's infinite. It's like electricity. We may not have the light turned on, but we know that it's there. We don't see it, only in the form of the light that comes through the light bulb or switching something on. But a lot of things that are invisible in this world are visible to us. Did you know that your ability to see the spectrum of light is only 0.005%? So we only see a tiny, tiny bit of what's available to our eyes. Let's say our brain only computes a very small amount. So to me, we go back to our spirit selves, and we either get recycled back onto the earth if we are pulled like a magnet back to the earth, or we can then move on to a higher dimension where we are, where our lessons on the earth have been learned. But it may take thousands of lifetimes to do that. I believe that we review our life. We look back at what's happened and how we've progressed and what things we've experienced and what further experiences we need to enjoy. It may not be on the earth. It may be in a different dimension, in a different world. But we get to choose with the kindest, most loving beings that work with us to decide where our next step is going to be, where we're going to take our consciousness next. So I think we choose depending on how we feel this particular life's gone.
So, well, this seems to be a common theme from some of the psychics we've interviewed, where they said, you're a spiritual being having a human experience, and when you pass on to the next realm, that you are then eventually reincarnated into many more lives, and you've had potentially many more lives before that, until you build a certain understanding. And then you progress on to the next dimension, like you say, or further up, or a higher plane or something. Is that right in me saying that?
Pretty much. If you see the Earth as a school of learning, but also every experience that we have, every experience that every life form has, is contributing to the consciousness of the whole. So every so often, it's like a breath in and a breath out. So you can imagine the Creator breathing out and sending information far and wide across the cosmos, and then the breathing in is like it is harvesting all the information. So on the smaller level with the individual, you've harvested information about your experience on the earth, and then you review what's gone on and you decide. So again, you're an empowered sovereign being that decides, along with your guides and your spiritual guides and maybe loved ones that you're working with as a group, I think you incarnate as a soul group as well. That's what I feel. And you know, connecting up with people that you suddenly recognise or are very familiar with. And you go, oh, I'm sure I've known you from somewhere before, never seen them before, but turn out to be part of your soul group.
I found that. Sorry to interject. I was going to say on that note, I found that I've bumped into people and met people in my life so far. A few people where I just felt like I'd known them for all my life, and I'd spoken to them for like 2 minutes. Would you say there's anything in that?
Absolutely, definitely. They're your tribe.
Yeah.
You know, I always say your vibe attracts your tribe. So to be your real, true, authentic self is the other thing that I really want to help people become, because then you can attract people into your life that are reflecting, you know, who you are and giving you feedback and other aspects of your consciousness that may need awakening. It normally happens through people that you end up recognizing and knowing and thinking, I'm sure I've connected with them before. How can they seem so familiar? And you get on really, really well. And obviously when people are doing readings, they often say to me, it's like my twin flame or my soul flame, or I just instantly knew them. You know, the minute I met them, it's like I'd known them for years. So I do believe you incarnate with your soul group. And sometimes part of your soul group, they're not necessarily your best friends. They can be your worst enemy, or you could experience something really horrific with this person. But you've agreed before you came here that they would behave that way in order for you to learn maybe forgiveness or non-judgment. Or so quite often they would say the greatest enemies in spirit are often our greatest allies.
Wow. That's amazing.
So I think you can reconnect with your soul group, and eventually you go back. You know, you go back to source. But I think you choose when that is. You know, you decide when that is. If you're vibrating high enough, you would then move on to the next level. So they say seventh heaven. So we're on the third dimension here, moving to the. There is supposed to be an ascension happening on this planet, where a lot of consciousness, a lot of awareness, a lot of beings are moving on to the fifth dimension.
Right.
Happening in our lifetime, Oliver.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe we could have a deep dive into that at some point with you in a future show, because we're always interested in taking it further beyond that. You know, beyond what after you passed on and what happens. You know.
Oh, really? Because obviously the first interest is that people want to know what's going to happen to them. You know, what's in it, what's in their life for them, what's coming up, what's their future. But obviously, people create their own future with their thoughts and their beliefs, and what's been programmed into you from an early age, what your conditioning is. So a lot of that I can tap into. You can see the behaviours, and there's certain behaviours and belief systems that run that behaviour that you can change, that you can replace, that you can upgrade. It's like your software and your computer. Do you feel you're ready for an upgrade, and how do you do that? So it's also, that is part of the journey, is that the soul's consciousness wants to connect more to its higher perspective, and has its greater abilities, so that we're not so reliant on looking outward in life for the answers, but we find them from within.
Okay, that's very interesting. Well, I think we're going to leave the deep stuff there for the moment and have a look at some less deep stuff. I'm going to ask you, what was the last book you read, or perhaps box set that you watched?
Well, I'm currently reading a book at the moment called Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciak. It was written in the 90s, and I read it in the 90s. And have you ever been to see a film or read a book, and when you reread it or re-see the film, you see so much in it that you didn't notice before?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So it's like another level. So I'm reading this book, Bringers in the Dawn, which is about the family of light who are on the planet right now, being incarnated, the family of light, to raise the collective vibration. So I'm imagining, Oliver, that you are part of that family of light. It's an absolutely fascinating book, really fascinating. Box sets, I don't really get into huge amounts of box sets because I'm normally working in the evening. I don't tend to watch a lot of sort of programs and things during the day, but I have, through many people persuading me that it's actually really, really good. And actually, from a history perspective, I've started to watch The Crown.
Right.
It's only very recently, and I think there's about 3 series, isn't there? And I think I'm on the about the 4th episode of the first series. But absolutely fascinating stuff, because it obviously, so things that I find really interesting tend to be books that are written with true things in them, but with a bit of embellishment. Mm-hmm. Kate Moss is one of my favourite authors. I can't remember the first book I read of hers, but it was all steeped in French, in the south of France, and the Cathars, and all the sort of ancient sort of spiritual leaders that were persecuted for their beliefs. So, but it's based on real places and real time, and so it's mingled in with history. So I quite enjoy entertainment that has a kind of truth in it.
Right. Yeah, I'm very much a fan of factual books and reading those kind of things as opposed to fiction. But yeah, very interesting. Well, it's been fantastic to have you on the show today here on Psychic Social, Sas. Before we let you go, can you tell us where people can find you, the best ways to get in contact with you? So a website, some social media?
Through psychic messages.
Psychic messages, yes.
Get in touch with me through psychic messages. Basically, I am on social media. I am on the platforms there, and I kind of use the website on Facebook under my professional page, which is VisionOm, VISION.OM, which is the universal sound of the cosmos, God energy. In the beginning was not the word, but the sound. So VisionOm, and I can also be found at Sas Bullock as well. And also Bullock Sas on Instagram. So those are the best places to leave a message, to private message me or connect with me, or just go and have a look at the work I do and see if it is a match, if it vibrates, if it resonates.
Okay. Because
it's always important. I always say to people that not everybody's going to be a match for you in terms of your connection with your psychic awareness or wanting to tune into you. So it's always good to have a look at the information that a psychic or a medium's putting out and see how that sits with you. How does it resonate?
Okay.
And so it's really important to be drawn to someone. Right. So I always say, go and have a look at the work I do, Sas Bullock, or my professional page at VisionOm on Facebook.com. And that's the first port of call. And then I tend to have conversations with people over the phone, have little chats, and to see if they want to take it further with me and go on a journey with me. I do have a kind of lots of other strings to my bow, but again, it's whether people want to come on board with me and all the things that I do. So just the psychic readings and my intuition and working with that is one aspect of what I do, and it dovetails into all sorts of things that are all about uplifting someone's pathway in this world and how to enhance everything from their health. So I have lots of different go-to things that I would recommend to people to raise their vibration. I work with sound and energy. I work with the psychic aspect. I do shamanic journeying. So all of that is kind of what I put into how I work with people, and then through that they can access other things that I may offer.
Well, it's been lovely to chat with you today, Sas. Hopefully we can catch up again soon in a part 2 or potentially a Q&A. So that would be nice if possible.
Yeah, no, it'd be lovely. Obviously, it's my favourite. All of this is my favourite subjects. It's what I excel and drawn to. And so I've obviously been investigating this for many, many years. So I have lots of insights into all sorts of other areas as well of a kind of world that we live in. And it helps to make sense of it, doesn't it? It helps to give people a pathway. It may not be, for everybody, but a particular pathway they can follow to access their greater good, their greatest vision of themselves. How do you do that? So that's really what I'm about, is helping people on that awakening journey.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you again, Sas Bullock, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Thank you for joining us.
Oliver, thank you so much for inviting me on to your Psychic Social, and I look forward to coming on again and discussing other things as well. So thank you so much.
Great.
It's great speaking to you.
And you. Take care now.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us on Psychic Social from psychic.co.uk, the spiritual home of psychics.